Du Hanwu found his secretary at sunrise, sitting in a rowboat that had drifted sideways into the harbour rocks, one shoe missing. Hair full of seaweed, and a soggy dojang pouch clutched to her chest like a newborn. For one long second, the most feared man in Busan's dockside district did not move. He only stared at Han Yunbi slumped against the oars. Her Navy office blazer soaked through, a bruise blooming on her forehead, and, inexplicably, alive. Extremely irritated fortune pig named Bokai squirming under her other arm. "Yunbai," he said. She did not answer. The pig did, with an offended squeal. Behind him, 6 bodyguards arrived at a dead sprint, boots slipping on wet stone, all of them shouting different things at once. Haiyan Wu heard none of it. He was staring at the dojang pouch in her hand. The family seal, missing since midnight. The single object that made every contract his organization signed legally, terrifyingly official. And remembering that 6 hours earlier, he had stood in front of 200 guests and told her, in a voice cold enough for the whole ballroom to hear, "You ruin everything you touch." Now she was slumped in a stolen rowboat with the very thing she'd supposedly stolen wrapped safely against her heart. And the thing she had ruined was starting to look a great deal less like his dignity, and a great deal more like his entire night. "Get the doctor," he said. Then, quieter, mostly to himself, "And somebody grabbed the pig." 17 hours earlier, inside the crystal ballroom of the Heian Bay Hotel, Du Hanwu raised a glass of macchioli while 200 guests watched him like a king about to bless the harvest. Hanwu was not a king, but every dock foreman, karaoke bar owner, currency broker, and freight courier along the southern coast knew exactly whose signature made a shipment legal and whose silence made a problem disappear. He wore a black hanbok-collared suit, no tie, and the permanently unbothered expression of a man who had trained himself never to look surprised by anything except, apparently, his own secretary. At the edge of the crowd stood Han Yunbi, his private secretary of 5 years, wearing a plain cream dress under a tailored black blazer, because even at a party she dressed like someone prepared to correct a schedule, cancel a catastrophe, or quietly rescue a grown man from his own stubbornness. A headset was tucked behind one ear. A tablet was pressed to her side. Her expression said everything is under control, which everyone in the organization had learned, over 5 years, was secretary code for everything is currently on fire, and I am the only one who knows. Deputy Security Chief Ma Deok-su thought she was a menace in heels who second-guessed his every decision. Operations Director Yang Jae-hoon, silver hair, immaculate navy suit, a smile so mild it could put a shark to sleep, thought she was an obstacle standing directly between himself and the boss's full trust. The kitchen staff thought she tipped too well. The junior guards ran a monthly betting pool on whether she would finally snap at somebody in public, and every month, without fail, she did not. What nobody in the ballroom knew was that Yunbi had spent the last 4 hours quietly preventing 4 separate disasters, and the night was nowhere near finished. Disaster 1. The fortune pig. Bokai, the estate's beloved, and extremely expensive, good luck mascot, had escaped his silk-lined pen an hour before the toast and was currently at large somewhere inside a 5-star hotel hosting 200 of the city's most dangerous, best-dressed people. Yunbai had already caught him twice. Once behind the dessert table, once inside a coat closet with a senator's fur stole, and lost him a third time near the kitchen. Disaster 2. The seal. The dojang, the physical stamp that made every Do Group contract legally binding, had gone missing from Hyan Wu's breast pocket sometime between the welcome speech and the second toast. Yun Bai had noticed within 90 seconds, because noticing things within 90 seconds was, professionally speaking, her entire personality. Disaster 3. Deputy Chief Ma's cousin had brought an uninvited karaoke machine as a gift and was already testing the microphone. Disaster 4. The only one that actually mattered was standing 8 feet away in a navy suit, smiling mildly at absolutely nothing. Yun Bai had watched Yang Jae-hoon lift the dojang pouch from Hyun Woo's jacket with the smooth, unbothered confidence of a man adjusting someone's collar. She had watched him slide it into his own sleeve. She had watched him do this while making warm, uninterrupted eye contact with a city councilman, which was, she had to admit, an impressively multitasked crime. A different secretary would have screamed. Yun Bai moved through the crowd instead, the same way she always did, like she was about to make one more embarrassing correction, not stop an actual theft. She had learned, over 5 years, that if she made protection look like clumsiness, nobody watching took her seriously enough to stop her. A dropped tray looked like butterfingers. A rerouted car looked like bad traffic planning. A missing seal, recovered quietly before anyone noticed it was gone, looked like nothing at all, which was exactly the point. "Miss Han?" Deputy Chief Ma hissed as she passed him, one hand still on his walkie-talkie, the other gesturing at his cousin's karaoke machine like it was a live grenade. "He's about to toast." "I know." "Then stand still for once in your life." She did not stand still. Hyan Wu saw the whole exchange from the stage, jaw tightening, because in 5 years he had never once seen Yun Bai ignore a direct instruction from security without a reason, and every time she did, something inconvenient, a car bomb, a bad contract, a karaoke incident, turned out to be true. "Not now," he said quietly as she reached the edge of the stage, and the nearest guest heard it and drifted away like the tide going out. "Yes, now," Yun Bai said. "Your seal is missing." "My seal is in my pocket." "Your seal," she said, patting his empty breast pocket for emphasis, "is somewhere between the dessert table and Director Yang's left sleeve." Yang, standing a polite distance away, did not so much as blink. That, Hyan Wu would later realize, was the most suspicious thing about him. He never looked guilty, because he had trained his face the way other men trained dogs. "If this is another one of your instincts," Hyan Wu said, low enough for only her to hear, "swallow it. Tonight of all nights." "I wish I could." She reached toward his jacket to check the inner pocket herself, lost her balance on the polished marble, and grabbed the nearest solid object to steady herself, which happened to be the tray of Macchioli glasses a passing server was carrying past the stage. The entire tray went down. 200 guests watched glass shatter and rice wine splash across white marble and directly up the front of Du Hyan Wu's very expensive shoes. For one horrible second, nobody breathed. Then, from somewhere near the back, a single unmistakable squeal. Bokkai the fortune pig had chosen that exact moment to come tearing across the ballroom floor, chased by 2 increasingly desperate waitstaff, and skidded directly through the spilled rice wine, leaving a trail of tiny hoofprints across the marble like the world's most disrespectful red carpet. The ballroom lost its mind. Somewhere in the chaos, A guest actually applauded, assuming it was part of the entertainment. Somewhere else, Deputy Chief Ma's cousin, mistaking the commotion for his cue, switched on the karaoke machine, and a wildly inappropriate trot song began blaring through the sound system. Hyun-woo looked down at his ruined shoes, at the pig now hiding under the dessert table, at 200 guests, either laughing or pretending not to, and at Yoonbi standing directly in front of him with an empty tray-shaped stain spreading across her dress. His face did not show amusement. It showed humiliation. And Yoonbi had learned 5 years ago that humiliation turned into anger in Do Hyun-woo faster than almost anything else on earth. "You ruin everything you touch," he said. The words landed exactly where an older wound already lived. 8 months earlier, after she'd cancelled a private dinner because the caterer had swapped the fish order without approval, he'd pulled her into a hallway and told her, "You're useful, Yoonbi. Don't confuse useful with irreplaceable." She had smiled then, because smiling was easier than letting him watch her mind quietly rewrite her resignation letter for the 4th time that year. Now, in front of the entire room, soaked in rice wine with a pig somewhere behind her stealing an entire cake, she smiled again. "At least your shoes survived worse odds than your seal did," she said. Several guests choked on their drinks. Somewhere, Deputy Chief Ma made a small, strangled noise that might have been a laugh he was trying very hard to swallow. "Out," Hyun-woo said. "Go home, Miss Han." "With pleasure," she said, and turned, and walked toward the side doors with her chin very high and her dress dripping macchioli with every step, leaving behind a ballroom, a squealing pig, an unfinished karaoke solo, and a director with a stolen family seal still tucked warmly in his sleeve. What nobody noticed, because everybody was too busy watching a pig eat wedding cake, was that on her way out, Yoonbi passed directly behind Yang Jae-hoon, and, with the same casual sleight of hand she'd used to save this organization roughly 40 times in 5 years, lifted the dojang pouch straight back out of his sleeve. She did not tell anyone. Telling people required them to believe her first. And nobody in that ballroom, including the man she loved, believed her about anything until it was much too late. Yang Jae-hoon noticed the pouch was missing 11 minutes later, in the coat closet, while checking to make sure it was still there. He did not panic outwardly. Panicking outwardly was against his personal philosophy. But he did, very quietly, start planning damage control. His plan had been simple. Hold the seal for one evening, use it to quietly authorize a shipment contract Hyun-woo had explicitly refused to sign, then return it before anyone noticed, walking away with full credit for securing the deal, and Yoonbi walking away with full blame for whatever chaos happened in between. It was not murder. It was, in Yang's own private description of himself, aggressive career advancement. It was going, he now realized, extremely poorly. He found Deputy Chief Ma near the valet stand. "Miss Han left with something of mine," he said pleasantly. "She left with an empty tray and a wet dress," Ma said. "And frankly, Director, I think she deserved the exit. I need you to bring her back. Quietly." Ma, who had personally disliked Yoonbi for 5 straight years over a series of extremely justified professional disagreements, looked at Yang's face for a long moment and felt, for the first time, a small itch of suspicion he couldn't quite name. "Why quietly?" "Because," Yang said, still smiling, "I'd hate for this to become a whole production. It became, within 6 hours, an enormous production. Yoonbi did not go home. Going home meant sitting alone in her apartment, rereading a resignation letter she'd rewritten so many times the paper had started to soften at the folds, and she had promised herself, months ago, that she would stop doing that particular hobby. Instead, she went to the harbour, because the harbour was quiet, and because if the seal genuinely mattered as much as she suspected, someone was going to come looking for it before morning, and she intended to be somewhere with a very good view of who. She was right, technically, about almost everything, which was, as her late mother used to say, Yoonbai's most exhausting quality. 2 men in staff jackets found her near the boat rental shed a little after 1 in the morning. Their jacket stitching was black. Hotel staff wore grey. "Miss Han," one said, with the overly polite tone of a man about to do something rude. "Director Yang would like his property back." "Director Yang's property," Yoonbai said, "belongs to Mr. Du." "We were told you'd say something like that." What followed was less a fight and more an extended, undignified struggle involving a rowboat, a coil of rope that turned out to be tied to nothing useful, and, through no fault of anyone's planning, Bokkai the fortune pig, who had escaped the estate a second time that night, and, in a stunning display of poor life choices, had wandered directly onto the same dock in search of the abandoned dessert table cake he apparently still remembered fondly. In the chaos of the pig charging one of the men directly in the shins, Yoonbi grabbed the dojang pouch, shoved the pig under one arm, because leaving him behind felt somehow worse than everything else currently happening, and pushed off in the nearest unlocked rowboat with the closest thing to a plan she had left, which was not here. She did not get far. A poorly timed wave, a badly aimed oar, and a head-first meeting with the boat's own bench left her slumped and half-conscious as the little boat drifted, unmanned, into the harbour rocks just as the sky over Heian Bay began, very slowly, to turn grey. Her last clear thought, before everything blurred, was not that she might be seriously hurt. It was worse. He's going to think I stole it and ran. Hainu had not slept. He told himself it was because the seal was missing, because a director he'd trusted for a decade was behaving strangely, because 200 guests had watched his shoes get destroyed by rice wine and his favourite pig. He did not tell himself the real reason, which was that the ballroom had felt wrong the second Yoonbi walked out of it, and it had kept feeling wrong for 6 straight hours. He was walking the private dock alone at sunrise, supposedly to meet a harbour contact about a rumour that someone inside his own organisation had bought staff access to last night's event, when he saw the boat. By the time the doctor arrived at the estate's small medical office 20 minutes later, half the household staff had gathered in the hallway, and the betting pool for once was not about whether the boss liked his secretary. It was about whether the pig was okay. He was. He was, in fact, thriving, having eaten most of a wedding cake and half a bouquet. Nurse Song, a blunt, unbothered woman who had treated this household through 3 shootouts and 1 extremely ill-advised karaoke injury, came out after 20 minutes and said, "Mild concussion, 1 sprained wrist, a bruise the size of a dinner plate, and she smells like a fish market. She'll live. Whether she wants to see any of you yet is a separate question." Hyun Woo went in anyway. Yoonbai was sitting up, hair still damp, a blanket around her shoulders, glaring at absolutely nothing with the particular fury of a woman who had spent the night rescuing a pig and a family heirloom, and still expected to be blamed for it. You have my seal, Hyun-woo said. I have your seal, she agreed. I also have your pig. Your gratitude, apparently, is on back order. Where is the pig? Eating your centerpiece. Somebody should stop him. Somebody will, Hyun-woo said, and did not move an inch toward the door. Yoonbai, what happened? She told him. All of it. The tray, the toast, the pig, the sleeve, the boat, the men in black stitched jackets, the pouch clutched against her chest, the entire time, like it was the only thing keeping her afloat, which, in a manner of speaking, it very nearly had been. Hyun-woo listened without interrupting, which was, for him, roughly equivalent to another man weeping openly. You could have told me Yang took it, he said finally. I told you your seal was missing. You told me to swallow my instincts. That was... He stopped, rubbed his face. That was before the pig incident. Everything is before the pig incident now. That's just how tonight is going to be measured from now on. Despite himself, the corner of his mouth moved. By mid-morning, Hyun-woo was standing in Yoonbi's small, painfully organized office at Do Tower, going through 5 years of files with Deputy Chief Ma hovering by the door, looking like a man watching his entire worldview quietly fall apart. She never files complaints, Ma said, staring at a drawer full of neatly labeled folders. I thought that meant she had nothing to complain about. It meant, Hyun-woo said, opening a folder marked simply Yang, that she filed everything somewhere you'd never think to check because you never once thought she was worth checking. The folder was, in its own quiet way, funnier than anything that had happened in the ballroom. Tuesday. Director Yang ordered 15 emergency ties on the company card. Investigated. They were for his nephew's wedding. Confronted him. He blamed inventory error. Filed for the record. Thursday. Director Yang took credit for the Incheon shipping deal in the quarterly report. I negotiated that deal over 3 phone calls he was not on. Did not correct him publicly. Filed for the record. Saturday. Director Yang asked Deputy Chief Ma's assistant to forge a signature. Just this once. Assistant refused. Reported to me instead of security, because, his words, nobody believes Miss Han about anything, but at least she writes it down. Ma read that last line twice and had to sit in the visitor's chair for a moment. There was a second, smaller folder, older, tucked in the back with a soft label written in different ink, like it had been added to slowly over years instead of all at once. Hyun-woo should not have opened it. He opened it anyway. Today he said I was useful, but not irreplaceable. I laughed in front of him because I've learned employees aren't allowed to look hurt. Then I went home, wrote my resignation, and didn't send it. Because 2 hours later his morning schedule needed fixing and apparently even a broken heart has to wait until after his 8 a.m. He left his coat on my chair last night because I fell asleep over the port contracts. He pretended not to notice I noticed. I pretended not to notice he pretended. We are both enormous cowards in very expensive clothing. I think I love him. Not the boss everyone bows to. The man who tips the ajumma at the noodle stand extra and tells everyone it's business strategy so nobody thinks he's being kind on purpose. Hyun-woo closed the folder slowly. Ma, watching his face from the doorway, decided this was an excellent moment to go check on the pig. Yang Jae-hoon made his move that evening, calling an emergency staff meeting in the very same ballroom. The marble now scrubbed spotless of both rice wine and hoofprints. "We are here," he announced to the assembled staff and a handful of very confused business partners, "because loyalty must survive uncomfortable truths. For years, Miss Han has redirected schedules, discarded my proposals, and, as of last night, stolen the family seal and fled the property with it. I believe." "You believe wrong," Yoonbi said, arriving through the side doors with her wrist still bandaged, Hyun-woo half a step behind her. And, to the audible delight of the entire kitchen staff, Bokkai the fortune pig trotting proudly at her heels wearing, for reasons nobody would ever fully explain, a tiny bow tie. "You should be resting," Yang said smoothly. "You should be running," Yoonbi said, and the pig, as if agreeing, let out a loud, extremely well-timed squeal that made 3 separate guests jump. Hyun-woo walked to the front of the room and opened a folder. "Director Yang lifted the family seal from my jacket at last night's toast. He was seen doing it by my secretary, whom he then attempted to have detained by 2 men wearing security jackets that do not belong to my security team." He looked at Ma. "Do those jackets belong to your team?" "Absolutely not," Ma said, with the wounded pride of a man who had spent the whole day discovering how thoroughly he'd misjudged someone. "Mine have my initials stitched on the collar. Those men had nothing. Cheap tailoring. Frankly insulting. He also," Hyun-woo continued, "used the seal to attempt authorization on a shipping contract I explicitly refused, planning to return it before anyone noticed, and take full credit for closing the deal. That is a wild accusation from a woman who literally stole a rowboat," Yang said, laughing lightly, playing to the room the way he always did. "I didn't steal the rowboat," Yoonbi said. "I borrowed the rowboat. Under duress. While also rescuing a pig, which, frankly, nobody in this room has thanked me for." The pig oinked, loudly, as if seconding the motion. A ripple of laughter moved through the staff. Yang's smile, for the first time in 10 years of employment, began to look strained at the edges. Hyun-woo held up the second folder, the one with the soft, handwritten label. "This is 5 years of Miss Han quietly catching things the rest of us were too proud, or too foolish, to notice. Fake ties on the company card. Forged signatures nobody wanted to report. Contracts you took credit for that she negotiated alone." He looked at the room, at every man who had rolled his eyes when she corrected them. Every guard who had assumed her caution was pettiness. Every director who had smirked when Hyun-woo scolded her in public. Every time this organization survived a mistake, it was usually because Han Yun-bi caught it first and let one of us take the credit for noticing. "She kept secret files," Yang said, voice climbing. "That's not loyalty, that's a filing system," Ma interrupted, unable to help himself. "A very good one. Better than mine, frankly, and I'm supposed to run security." Yang looked around the ballroom, at the staff who had stopped laughing and started listening, at Hyun-woo, at the pig, at Yoonbi standing with her chin very high despite the bandage and the bruise, and understood, all at once, that his aggressive career advancement plan had, somewhere between the karaoke machine and the pig, become the single most public failure in Do Group history. "This is absurd," he tried. You're all going to believe her because of a pig costume? The pig isn't in costume, Yumbi said. The pig is wearing a bow tie. There's a difference. And if you don't understand it, that tells everyone here everything they need to know about your judgment. The room laughed again, harder this time. Somewhere in the back, someone started a slow clap that quickly turned into general applause. Not for Yang this time. Heinwu, watching it happen, thought about the night before, about the men who had clapped politely while she walked out humiliated, and felt something settle uncomfortably in his chest. "Take him to the car," he told Ma. "Quietly. We'll discuss his severance somewhere that doesn't involve livestock." As Yang was escorted out, still protesting, still smiling that same mild, unbothered smile even now, Heinwu turned to the room. Han Yunbi did not steal from this organization, he said. She spent 5 years protecting it from people too proud to admit they needed protecting, including me. Yunbi looked away first. Public apologies, she was learning, could feel almost as strange as public insults. 3 weeks later, Yunbi had not returned to Du Tower. Haiyan Wu offered her a new title, a security review role, full authority, and a salary generous enough that most people would have mistaken it for an apology. She read the offer at her small apartment near the fish market, where Bokai the pig, now officially adopted by nobody in particular and unofficially living in her tiny courtyard, was contentedly destroying a potted plant and handed the paper back. "I don't want a promotion for surviving a pig-related boat accident," she said. "Then don't take it as one," Haiyan Wu said. "Take it because you're good at the job, better than anyone I've ever hired." "I know I'm good at the job. That was never the problem." "Then what's the problem?" She looked at him for a long moment. "The problem is that I've spent 5 years making myself invisible so you'd notice the work and not the woman doing it. I don't know how to do the opposite." "Then learn," he said. "I'll wait. Preferably somewhere the pig can't reach my shoes this time." Waiting did not come naturally to Du Heinwu. He was a man built for decisions, deadlines, and moving large amounts of money and men around a single afternoon. Waiting felt like standing outside a locked door holding a bouquet he wasn't sure she'd want. He learned small things because he'd missed too many large ones. Yumbi hated black coffee, despite having carried it to him for 5 years because his mornings started too early for anything gentler. She liked barley tea and burnt toast. She hated orchids, because every hotel in the city used them to cover the smell of industrial cleaner. She loved the pig with an intensity that alarmed everyone, including the pig. "Being called brave makes me tired," she told him once, when he tried the word out loud for the first time. Brave is what people call women right before they ask them to do one more dangerous thing for free. He never called her brave again. He called her, eventually, something else entirely, on the 29th morning, at the small dock where he'd found the rowboat drifting into the rocks. "I thought I might die out here," she said, looking at the water. "I know." "No," she said. "You know what happened. You don't know what I thought while it was happening." He stayed quiet. "I thought, if this is it, he's going to think I ran off with the seal. He's going to think I ruined the party and disappeared. And I hated that even then, even soaked and concussed and holding a pig. The thing I wanted most was for you to know I didn't run. I never once ran." Haiyan Wu reached into his jacket, and took out a small velvet box. Yunbi saw it immediately and went very still. "I'm not asking yet," he said. "Good," she said. "Because before you ask anything, you're going to answer me honestly. Ask. Are you doing this because I saved your seal?" "No." "Because you feel guilty about the ballroom?" "I'll feel guilty about the ballroom until the day I die. That's not the same as this." "Because it makes a better story now that everyone knows what Yang did." "I don't want a better story," he said. "I want a true one." She studied his face. "Then why?" "Because for 5 years I watched you catch every mistake in this organization except the one where I never told you that I noticed you," he said. "Because I left my coat on your chair and pretended I hadn't. Because I fired a supplier for calling you just the secretary and told everyone it was a pricing dispute. Because the night I found that boat, I wasn't afraid of losing the seal. I was afraid of a version of my life where you weren't in the next room correcting me." Her eyes filled. She did not wipe the tears away. "That pig," Hyun-woo added, "is also apparently part of the proposal now. He won't leave your side. I've accepted this." She laughed. A real one. Wet and startled. And it broke something loose in his chest that had been locked for longer than either of them wanted to count. He got down on one knee in the sand. No ballroom, no guests, no polite applause, just the harbor, the grey morning light, and one deeply unbothered pig rooting through the sand a few feet away. "Han Yunbi," he said, "will you marry me? Not as the woman who saved my seal, not as the best secretary I'll ever have, but as the person I want correcting my mistakes for the rest of my life?" "If I say yes," she said, "I am not doing this job for free anymore." "Understood." "And the pig comes too." "Also understood." "And if you ever tell me I ruin everything I touch again, I'll deserve whatever you throw at me. Preferably not another entire tray." She held out her hand. He slid the ring on. The pig, sensing an occasion, let out one long, satisfied squeal that echoed off the water, and somewhere back at the estate, the staff betting pool, checked obsessively all morning by half the household, finally, officially, closed. Deputy Chief Ma won 40,000 won. He donated it, without being asked, to a fund for the pig's vegetables. They walked back along the beach together. Not boss ahead and secretary behind, but side by side, a pig trotting a determined, proprietary circle around both their ankles the entire way. As the sun came up properly over Heian Bay for the first time in what felt, to both of them, like years.